Good morning, good day, good
Anyway,
evening, where you are, just the
thank
audience of the global energy community. Today, we have with us a special guest, Stefan Peters, who is the co-founder of Carbotopia Syndicate. And he goes with the tagline, "The future is already among us, just too scarcely spread to be obvious." He has a vast expertise of carbon capture and has various publications, or rather information disseminated from 1985 to 2008 with various companies as well. And he has 25 years experience in catalytic chemical vapor deposition of designable physical carbon and its use. And you can find him on LinkedIn if you have any questions or you would like to follow up on what he's working on and what other projects he has lined up. And thank you so much, Stefan, for collaborating with us. The floor is yours.
So, once again, hello, Natasha. I wanted to talk to you today about how nature works and what mankind could do to work with nature. Actually, about 10 years ago, we founded a nonprofit organization that is advocating for such a world in carbon and water balance. Now, nature is powered by regenerative energy, which it secures all habitats energy supply by storing solar energy in compounding carbon with water as the basis of the food chain for all habitats. And anything that's not used breaks down into carbohydrates at the end of life cycle in gases made from the same three atoms involved in the creation of the biomass. And here on the left, you see the sun and water and carbon, which photosynthesis can extract from CO2 by separating the oxygen to form plants. But when the plants cease, actually the residual energy goes into methane, CH4. The transformation losses are represented by CO2. And because there's always a mass energy constant, the mass is balanced by the formation of water again. So climate neutrality requires to keep the world in carbon and water balance. And that's possible by keeping terrestrial carbon and water use within a closed loop. So all living matter is built from carbon. So different carbohydrate structures, whereas the interesting thing is that we always have a carbon potency joining or compounded with some kind of water potency. The relationship between hydrogen and oxygen is always the same relationship like water. And the biggest mistake mankind is doing is that we dispose carbon into the atmosphere as if it was a one-way package of energy, because carbon actually packages loaded hydrogen energy in all these compounds. Now, nature stores the solar energy by these compounds made from carbon and water. Since energy can never get lost, the soul here of residual energy is methane. And the second side is that mankind is very lavish, disposing water into atmosphere as water vapor, which very often means dislocating water. Now, end-of-life nature, we already said, decomposes everything into these three basic atoms involved. And the methane, of course, is a very aggressive climate gas. But there are ways to stabilize it. It's called dry methane dissociation, which takes the methane into a solid carbon and releases hydrogen at the same time. And that is not climate effective. Now, the hydrogen actually is nature's regenerative energy. And nature uses the carbon in the methane just to package that energy for long-term storage. And therefore, nature always attaches hydrogen to carbon or alkaline atoms, which you can look at on like a charged battery electrolyte in its housing. And when hydrogen energy is discharged by oxygen into water, actually the water becomes the equivalent to a discharged battery electrolyte. So this is a very simple method. Now, our technology enables the physical carbon capture for use. We call it a PCCU. And actually, the natural decomposition of matter you can accelerate with technical means, either for solids in a steam-driven gasification, or for wet biomass, for compressibles in a biogas plant. And taking the gross decomposition gas from these processes, we can directly split the methane through the direct methane dissociation, dry methane dissociation, and into solid carbon. And we can take the hydrogen and loop it back into a methanation of the CO2, which is similar to what people contemplate as power to gas, and gain an extra methane feedstock that will increase the amount of carbon that can be recovered. Oh, I see I have a formatting thing. This should be 440. So anyway, and we actually recuperate water from these methanation. So everything stays in a terrestrial closed loop, the water as well as the carbon. And the way this process works is illustrated in this animation here. So the methane gas streams in. We add a catalyst system that, like an additive plating of the catalyst, builds up on the catalyst, on the supported catalyst system, releasing the hydrogen, escaping to the top. And because the carbon grows in such a hollow, very lightweight form, the external volume increases faster than the weight. So the finished carbon will always flow up and can be skimmed away from the top, so it doesn't congest the system, etc. So the key to for such a process to be capable is the right catalyst system. And you get some hydrogen at 0 CO2, and you recuperate the carbon. And carbon is actually nature's main long-term energy storage. So if we combine this physical carbon capture for use with green hydrogen, we could actually unlock a circular methane economy to secure electricity backup supply. Now, there are people who dream about methanizing CO2, which I showed in the previous picture, can be done. But if you have to do it from electrolysis, you never should forget that you need twice the amount of hydrogen to recuperate carbon from CO2 than if you take directly the captured carbon to make a hydrocarbon synthesis again. So basically, this is a way that allows you to use the renewable energy to produce green hydrogen. And when you need the hydrogen, you can take it out from a gas buffer, methane gas buffer, do the dry methane dissociation into hydrogen and carbon. The hydrogen can run a fuel cell for the electricity backup. And with the carbon, we can microwave reform with water that we recuperate from the fuel cell into hydrogen and carbon monoxide to add with the green hydrogen in the methanation process to replenish the methane. So this would be a perfect circular energy concept, which, for instance, energy communities having enough renewable electricity capacity could become energy independent with. If we take this to the EU level, just for an example, if I take the European gas supply and what it is used for and where it is coming from, we can actually replace some natural gas with electric systems, like, for instance, anything that goes into heating, we can resolve with heat pumps if we have the electricity to do so. And we have about 1/4 of the natural gas is potentially available as biomethane, which is a renewable source. And if we do physical carbon capture for use, we can actually double this potential into synthetic methane substitute. So we could reduce the fossil dependence on natural gas substantially. So it's a pity that currently biomass is primarily burned. That's not a very intelligent use of burning. And a lot of the comfort heat applications for which today fuels are burned could be perfectly solved with electric heat pump systems. Now, if we take it onto an even higher level, some people think that renewable energy is not sufficiently available in Europe, and we need to go to lower energy cost countries to do these power to gas applications. This also perfectly works for physical carbon capture use. If we haul it to those places, which physical carbon can be easily shipped, much easier than liquefied CO2, as some of the theories are expiring. And what you can see is that the cost of working with the captured carbon is about half of what the cost is for doing it with CO2 in CapEx. And also in OpEx, there is a significant difference between those two options. On a very low electricity tariff, the difference is not so big, but it increases with rising electricity tariffs. Now, at a low enough electricity tariff, the gas cost of such a synthetic gas from captured carbon, physical captured carbon reuse, would be about arm's length market of today's natural gas prices. So Now, quite often the question is, do we have enough physical carbon to capture to really replace fossil? And the answer is yes, because about half the municipal waste being processed, by the way, I initially showed, could cover all of the plastics industry raw material need. Actually, this would be a very value-adding process to plastic waste, because 1 ton of plastic waste is about equivalent to 6 barrel crude oil raw material value, which is tremendous and unbelievable that people just throw it away and let it leak into nature. Given how greedy people are, they just don't know. So if you take just 10% of all the after-use resources, then we would have about 12 times the amount that I exemplarily cited for the plastic feedstock. And since oil going into plastic is about 8%, so if we multiply that with 12, we are perfectly there to substitute crude oil completely with physical carbon capture for use. Now, why isn't it happening? The famous COP, the conferences of parties, often misunderstood as being a climate conference. It's good marketing, but COPs were originally founded by the oil industry. This guy here on the left, Maurice Strong, was a very influential oil magnate. And at that time, they introduced that to bash coal by making CO2 the topic of climate, whatever. And it's very interesting that Angela Merkel chaired the first ever COP, was 16 years chancellor of a country that I'm not sure if they already made a resolution about the phase out of coal of Germany. But until now, however, Germany never did, although she had been ruling it for 16 years. And I personally met a very high Chinese diplomat who was in charge of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. And actually, when you study the SDGs, you will find that they include everything you need to become sustainable. Nevertheless, the UN did a bad job in marketing it, because very few people are aware of the SDGs, and even less know the SDGs in detail. But this security advisor of the Chinese president said very famously that China's Belt and Road Initiative should better comply with the SDGs, because otherwise the planet won't be able to take it. I was impressed by Greta Thunberg when she said, nobody told us. And therefore, I decided to go out and speak out what I know. And I was very optimistic when Mrs. von der Leyen first took office and came up with her Green Deal motto of climate neutrality. However, until today, she has never defined that term. My term of defining it is taking carbon and water into terrestrially closed loops, because then we don't emit anything, and then we would be climate neutral. But somehow politics don't really like to embark on that. However, when we take the last COP was everything about carbon capture sequestration. So CO2, it actually should be called carbon dioxide capture. But they like to create the confusion with carbon capture. So people are confused between carbon as a resource and CO2 as a debris. But this is, when you look at the contemporary discussions, this is shocking how everybody jumps on this carbon capture for sequestration, because that's not changing the root causes of our problem, because our problem is that we just squander carbon, that we don't keep it as a resource in circulation. So that's very unfortunate. So this is our team, our core team in the Carbotopia Syndicate. And for anybody who would like to get an idea on the dry methane dissociation in operation, here is a video behind this QR, quick response code, where you can watch how that process works. And that's about it.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for this very valuable and information-filled presentation. I learned quite a lot. Oh, okay, that's great. So the question was, are there any environments where the physical carbon capture of use has actually been implemented and is being utilized?
No. I said environmentally, it has not yet been employed. Okay. Industrially, for special materials, my team had been operating it for several years, over several thousand hours, continuous production. And we made special composite materials, enhancing electrical, thermal conductivity, and mechanical strength for various applications. But for climate actions, it's a conflict against the interests of the oil industry, which has very strong political influence everywhere. I mean, even the financing sector, you have to envision that there's no big institutional asset portfolio managed by financial experts that would not include oil assets. And they enjoy great profits, and they just don't want to support anything that could stop that show. Concerning your last question, what would be the benefit of implementing? The benefit is very simply about halving the life cycle cost of all synthetic materials, because today we spend a lot of money on the disposal, on remedying the disposal. And if we recycle the carbon from it, we save having to buy new carbon in, because today, for every ton of CO2, 2.5 barrel crude oil are imported for replenishment. So these are costs that you can save when you spend the remediation cost on carbon recycling which is cost covering for carbon recycling. And then you save having to replenish the carbon that's lost into CO2. So therefore, it would be more economic for everybody. And therefore, it is something that would work anywhere in this world. Doesn't need a rich society. In contrary, the less a society has, the more advantages it's, because it can become self-sufficient in its supply.
Okay, that sounds really, really great. And thank you so much for the knowledge that you have shared. I can only assume that the listeners of this webinar are going to be extremely happy with the knowledge that they're going to get. And with that being said, I, on behalf of the global energy community, would like to thank you once again for sharing your time and your expertise with us. And we hope for all the best, and we wish you really well with all your future endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to spread the message. Thanks.
Yes, anytime.